Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Vineet. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. And I also thank you for the opportunity given for me. I'm happy to see our professors and seniors logged in. So that's a constant encouragement from them that has taken us a long way. I'm going to talk about RIRS and anomalous kidneys. As an endourologist, we keep doing RIRS day after day. But what makes RIRS and anomalous kidneys so interesting? That's because of the different orientation of the pelvic calyceal system that we have a difficulty or a happy ending towards the end of RIRS. The most of the time, the question that comes to one's mind is whether I will be able to access the stone. Second, how good is the clearance going to be? So we started doing RIRS, a team of us started doing RIRS in 2009. We have come a long way. And we have done about 12 horseshoe kidneys, 6 crossed ectopias, 10 cases of pelvic and lumbar kidneys, and 7 cases with calyceal diverticulum. I would like to share our experience to have some good insight into RIRS in anomalous kidneys. Coming to the anomaly of the rotation, malrotation is one of the commonest anomalies that most of us encounter. Most of the time, it goes unnoticed unless we enter the pelvic calyceal system to do RIRS. We would be finishing the stone with semi-rigid URS and not realize that it is a malrotated kidney. Sometimes when we tend to puncture the kidney for PCNL, we will have difficulty in gaining access, and that is when the importance of malrotation really comes into picture. Though there are lots of anatomical variations, the commonest malrotation is where the pelvis is located anteriorly and the calyces are pointing posteriorly. So we tend to have good access with the semi-rigid and the flexible ureteroscope, and no doubt that we have a good clearance after a reasonable fragmentation. This is one example of a malrotated kidney. As you can see in the clip, I have already broken a stone in the renal pelvis, and inspection with the semi-rigid ureteroscope itself shows the infundibulum of all the calyces. So this pelvis is located anteriorly and all the calyces are posted posteriorly. And wherever we enter, probably the upper and the middle calyces, we can directly enter with the semi-rigid ureteroscope and break the stone comfortably. These systems will have very good clearance after the procedure. Coming to abnormalities of the forms and fusion, the form and the fusion. Here we have fused or unfused crossed ectopic kidneys and the commonest fusion anomaly, that is the horseshoe kidney. Going on to the crossed fused ectopia. This is a patient with right to left inferior crossed fused ectopia. Usually the ureteric orifices are located normally. As you can see, the flexible ureteroscope enters from the right ureteric orifice, crosses the midline, and goes to the renal pelvis. When we do RIRS in anomalous kidneys, the basics of RIRS will always be adhered to. There is no difference in the way that we assess the system, the way we do the retrograde study, assess the ureter, place the access sheet, and gain access to the pelvic calyceal system. So the basics remain the same. This is endo view of the same patient. The pelvic calyceal orientation is completely different here because of the malrotation. Usually, we have a vertical alignment of the pelvis and renal calyces. In this crossed fused ectopia, we have a horizontal lie of the pelvic calyceal orientation, where we may have little bit of difficulty in accessing the upper calyx and the lowermost calyx because of acute bend, but the middle calyx will be accessible straight. It is straightforward access to the middle calyx. So we can basket a stone from the lower calyx or the upper calyx, place it in the middle calyx, and have a good clearance. So this is another middle calyx. Slowly going into the upper calyx. We have to bend acutely into the upper calyx to gain access. Vertical. This is another patient with left to right inferior unfused ectopia. The basics of any malrotated kidney is that the renal pelvis will be located anteriorly. So whenever we have an assessment with the contrast study, we always have to make sure that the pelvis is located anteriorly and how the infundibulum and the renal calyces enter from the renal pelvis. So that anatomical orientation is very important, and that will make our life very easy when we go with the flexible ureteroscope. As you can see, there are two stones. We finished with the RIRS. The alternative option is to do it with a lap pyelolithotomy. The pelvis being anteriorly placed, it will be very easy to do a laparoscopic pyelolithotomy in such patients. Coming to the commonest fusion anomaly, the horseshoe kidneys. We need to have little orientation with the anatomy, the alteration in the anatomy here. The renal pelvis and the ureters are anteriorly placed and they cross ventrally to the isthmus. The kidneys are low placed than the normal ones. The calyces have atypical orientation. Every patient, it is different. Usually, the atypical orientation is what will confuse us when we go inside the system and break the stone. In our first case with horseshoe kidney, I had a very good entry into the middle calyx, had a very nice fragmentation of the stone, and what I expected was entirely opposite. After 1 month of stenting, when I did the X-ray KUB, we could see the stone fragments were still present in the middle calyx. We were really puzzled. That was because of the atypical orientation. The middle calyx was more dependent and the fragments did not clear. This was with the first generation of lasers where the fragmentation was not a dusting mode or anything. We used to only fragment into smaller pieces. The difficulty will increase when we have to access to the lowermost calyces. They will extend medially to drain the isthmus. The ureter may insert high on renal pelvis, and this would explain the higher incidence of a PUJ obstruction in about 1/3 of the patients with horseshoe kidney. The upper ureter bends over the isthmus. This purely depends on the thickness of the parenchyma at the level of isthmus. This will play a major role while we are introducing the access sheath or the flexible ureteroscope through that part of the ureter. We may encounter difficulty and we have to be extremely cautious in crossing that area. We have to keep in mind that the horseshoe kidneys have variable blood supply, and if possible, it's always better to have a good arteriographic phase when we do a contrast imaging, so that in case we need to puncture the system, we are oriented there also. This is going to be a challenging horseshoe kidney with a malrotated left kidney. Now the pelvic calyceal anatomy is completely deoriented, and if we have stones in the lower calyx or in the middle calyx, it is going to be very difficult. So before entering any system, we need to have a clear orientation of how the calyces and the pelvis is oriented. This is a left-sided horseshoe kidney. This is a CM image. As you can see in the first image, we have the flexible ureteroscope placed in the renal pelvis, which is straight. And entry into the upper calyx is easy. Entry into the next upper calyx is slightly tilted. You can see a slight tilt in the flexible ureteroscope. Entering the middle calyces was little difficult. Here the calyces were facing anteriorly. As you can see that the chip end-on view of the tip of the flexiscope can be seen. So the pelvis calyces are placed anteriorly. Now the real difficulty comes to enter the lowermost calyx. Here, most of the time, the challenge will be in the form of a narrow infundibulum. So if a stone is present in the lowermost calyx, then we have to think twice before we enter into the system, because to basket the stone, we may have difficulty because of narrow infundibulum. If we tend to break the stone in situ, we will not have clearance. So we have to think twice before we enter a lower calyceal stone in a horseshoe kidney. This is another patient with a left-sided PUJ obstruction along with a lower calyceal stone, which we were just discussing about. For this patient, we did a laparoscopic transmesocholic pyeloplasty. As you can see, we have done a dismembering. The renal pelvis is wide open and the ureter is spatulated and lying medially. We had a 11 mm disposable scope through which the flexible ureteroscope was passed. Once the flexiscope was passed inside, the anatomical orientation was totally different. We could gain access to the lowermost calyx, and the stone could be basketed with the use of engaged basket. As you can see, the infundibulum was just adequate to allow the stone to be grasped and completely taken out. Otherwise, we would have broken with the help of laser and removed it as a couple of fragments. Here, we have removed the stone in total. Coming to the anomalies of the ascent. If the kidney lies opposite to the sacrum and below the aortic bifurcation, that becomes the pelvic kidney, and we will have 56% associated with hydronephrosis. And if the kidney is present in the lumbar, in the iliac fossa, this is called as a lumbar kidney. This will be near the sacral promontory. In pelvic kidney, we will see the orientation little different than in the lumbar kidney. This is a patient with pelvic kidney with 2 stones in the renal pelvis. This is a RIRS endo image. Here, a tip is to use a shorter access sheath. Usually, we will use a 35 centimeter access sheath, in which case here we will reach the pelvic calyceal system fast. So it is better if we use a 27 centimeter access sheath, so that handling the scope would be more easier. The pelvic calyceal orientation is totally different. The pelvis is here. All the calyces are pointing posteriorly. We can comfortably break the stone and expect a very good clearance in this patient. This is another patient with right lumbar kidney. The stone bulk is too high. So for this sorts of patients, we would really recommend to go ahead with a laparoscopic pyelolithotomy rather than to proceed with RIRS. Here is another patient with lumbar kidney on the right side. As you can see, the renal pelvis is positioned anteriorly. Here, the infundibulae are long. So if there is a stone inside a particular calyx, then it could be difficult to access. Here, the stone is in the renal pelvis. So we could comfortably do a RIRS and give a complete clearance in single sitting. Coming to the anomalies of the calyces, calyceal diverticulum is something which we come across often. And most of the time, we will be able to give a complete clearance in calyceal diverticulum. Once we do a flexible ureteroscope, we inject contrast. With the help of C-arm guidance, we try to locate the opening of the diverticulum inside the pelvic calyceal system. So once the opening is identified, we pass a guide wire. Here we are trying to have a look inside the through that opening, and we could see a bunch of secondary stones lying there. So now we are sure where we are. The aim in these patients is to clear the stone as well as make the diverticular opening much bigger so that the patient doesn't come back with recurrence. So the first aim is to open the diverticular opening. So here we are doing it with a holmium laser. We have done a very good opening there, and then we went inside to break the stone into small dust particles. Once that is over, we keep a stent inside, and the stent was lying there for 4 weeks. We had a reasonable clearance. Now we have this particular patient, we have a 9th year follow-up now. She is stone free. You can see a nice opening at the end of the procedure. Coming to the anomalies of the ureter, this is another thing that we frequently encounter. Either it could be a partial duplication or a complete duplication. In a patient here with a complete duplication, we have seen upper moiety ureter having a ureterocele and an impacted stone in the upper moiety infundibulum. The lower moiety ureter was normal. This is a flipped image of the same patient. Coming to the endo view. As we can appreciate, the normal right ureteric orifice can be seen. Sorry, there is a delay in playing the video. So what we did, we have done a ureterocele incision, did a semi-rigid ureteroscope. The moment we did a ureterocele incision, we could the stone got disimpacted and we could completely basket the stone in toto. Sorry, that video, I couldn't play that video. And coming to the partial duplication, this is a patient who came with 3 stones in the ureter with raised renal parameter and gross hydroureteronephrosis. We did a ureteroscope. We couldn't get a contrast imaging because of raised renal parameters. So we did a ureteroscope, semi-rigid, broke 2 stones, and we could see another stone there. But when we did an endoscopic inspection, we couldn't come through the stone. So RGP was done, and RGP is showing a partial duplication starting at the level of SI joint. And as you can see, the stone was located in the lowermost calyx of the lower moiety. We could do a flexible ureteroscope and give a complete clearance. Coming to another interesting situation, ADPKD, autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease. We come across this quite often, and associated stone disease also. Unfortunately, most of these patients might have a raised renal parameter, so we would not be asking for a contrast imaging regularly. This is one particular right-sided ADPKD system where after the renal pelvic stone was broken, we did a routine inspection of the system. To our surprise, there was complete distortion of the pelvic calyceal anatomy. The right-sided system was completely horizontally placed. The upper calyx was very close to the tip of the transverse process. The right-sided system I had to inspect like how we inspect a left-sided lower calyx. This is endo view of the same patient. Sorry, again, I have problem in playing the videos because of unstable internet connectivity. So I'll go to the next one. So the points to remember, whenever we come across anomalous kidneys, the first question that comes is whether we will be able to gain access to that particular system. The second question is whether we will be able to clear the stone after fragmentation. So RIRS is safe in anomalous kidneys, and we can expect good success. A thorough understanding of the pelvic calyceal orientation is mandatory. So it is always recommended that we do a contrast CT imaging along with the 3D reconstruction image if possible to gain maximum knowledge before we enter the system. In most of the patients with rotational anomalies, the renal pelvis will be anteriorly placed. So that is a tip, and so that we can go and search for the pelvic calyceal orientation that way. In case of difficult orientation, we have to consider alternative procedures, and that can be discussed with the patients prior. Thank you for your patient listening, and I take this opportunity to thank our mentor, Dr. Devanathan, Dr. Govindarajan, Dr. Maheshwaran, Dr. Vinod Khanna, Dr. Karthikeyan, and Dr. Suresh. Together, we form the True Foundation, and we thank all of you for this opportunity again. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikram. I think we should also thank the mentors who you mentioned. You guys have been kind enough to give us a platform. We have a couple of questions. The first thing which came in from another media, they asked whether you have to put an stent before you do an RIRS for anomalous kidneys always, or you don't think so?
So I don't think so. Most of the patients, the horseshoe and the cross-fused ectopia, the videos that I have shown here, this was not a pre-stented system. So as I said, the pre-stented system is not mandatory for all the anomalous kidneys. It is the same incidence like how we do. We have to do like what he said, 40%. In our experience, we have seen about 20% may need a pre-stenting, and the remaining, I think, we'll be able to do a good job without pre-stenting.
Right. Any scope in particular that you prefer to use?
We have been using Karl Storz FlexX2 right from day one.
And do you think that because of doing anomalous kidneys, I'll rephrase the question. He says, do you think using your scopes will cause damage to the scope because you're putting them in different angles and different corners?
Most of the time, no. But we can have difficulty in access to particular calyces, especially in the cross-fused ectopia. I showed the difficult angulation in the upper and the lowermost calyx. So in such systems, we have to be a little careful. But otherwise, I don't think it causes extra damage to the scope per se. And more than a percutaneous procedure, flexible ureteroscope offers great help for us and to the patient in safeguarding the system.
Right. Dr. Sanjay Khadge asks you, what is the stone clearance in the first session of anomalous kidney in your experience?
We have, it should be more than 90%. We have not had any difficulty just because of anomalous kidneys, except those horseshoe kidneys where we were learning lesson. That was during our learning curve. We thought whatever we see with the angulation was easier to break, and so the fragmentation will also be better. It wasn't so. That is why I insisted on that point of different orientation of the calyces in horseshoe kidneys, and most probably in all the anomalous kidneys. So we have to reassess and tailor it depending on every system. And second thing is, the success rate is partly because of the good energy sources that we have nowadays, rather than the older generation ones. Now we have all the dusting modes available and other technologies to have a very good fragmentation. So that also partly aids in increasing the success after the RARS.
Okay, great. I think, what about the diverticulum incision? Is there a specific laser setting which you think is useful for all of us to use?
Actually, the setting is the same. We use a higher frequency. Basically, for stones, we use lower frequency. The Trichy group, we have been trained with using a lower frequency. But here, for the incision of the diverticular mouth, we use higher frequency and lower energy. It would be around 15 and 1.5.
Okay, and the last question is: do you think an access sheath is a boon or a bane for anomalous kidneys?
It's a boon.
Okay, so I think that kind of answers most of the questions. Thanks, Vikram. Thank you so much for the enlightening presentation.